Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet again another fantastic indie creator interview. It is your Caped Crusader, Cody, and we are keeping it geekly with our good friend Eli McGirr of Ravenborn Comics. We're here to break down Project Solomon, issue number 1, and everything in between. Eli, welcome to the show, finally. It's so awesome to get you on.
Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah, I know we've been good friends in the Twitter spaces and hanging out just on Twitter, but like getting face-to-face finally, it's awesome to kind of get a chance to like break things down with you and learn what went into this comic. So speaking of that, you know, what kind of drove you to creating comics in the first place? Let's begin with your first steps into it.
So I have a kind of a background with animation and game art. So I tried to become a storyboard artist at first, just because that was what my degree was towards, just doing a bunch of storyboard art and concept art. I did that from March from 2021 till August, and I lost track after 70 rejection letters to where no way would hire me. And I'm like, and I would ask them like, hey, thank you for looking at my portfolios or anything I could work on, and I would get nothing. Right.
Out of all those rejections, you never got a single.
I got a single reply back of why. So I'm like, okay, let's switch gears over to doing comic books, because you know I always loved reading comic books, and my art style was always in like a comic book art style. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, let's try doing comic books. So I switched up my portfolio into doing cover art, and I did that from August till November, and I applied to like a bunch of different indie studios. And I have like a list of like 40 different studios that I would apply to. At the end of every month, I would send out a new portfolio. And again, I would get rejection letters for every last one of them, and none of them would tell me why. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So that was... You were
sending just cover art though?
Yeah, it was cover art, and then I'd send like... I had applied for being a cover artist position, send them cover art, and I'd be like, okay, here's my artwork. And
so why not try anything like interior wise?
I actually moved into interior in December.
Okay. He's like, I'm getting there, Cody. Give me time.
So I wanted to try doing cover art because I love doing cover art first, right? So I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do a job, let me try doing cover art. That didn't work out, so then I moved over into doing ink work, because I'm like, okay, let's do interiors, because you know, be more likely to get in interiors. And then inking is like not like the big penciler job; it's like the assistant essentially. So I'm like, let me try doing that. So I made a whole new portfolio doing inks, and I did any sort of page that I can get my hands on. I'd be messaging pencilers like, hey, I'm trying to become an inker. Can you send me your pencils? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And they send me their pencils, and I ink.
That's cool. You got more response from them than the other, like,
I got more responses from pencilers than I did actual publishers.
Yeah. Who did you end up inking for? Did you like work with a couple people or anyone that you might be able to mention?
I didn't professionally work for them. I just asked them, hey, I need stuff from my portfolio. Can you send me pencils? I got stuff from, what's his name? I have him. He worked on Venom. I got some Venom pencils. That's
really cool.
What's his name? He works with Donnie Cates. I forgot his name.
I'm more DC than you're asking the wrong person.
I have his comic book like over there, but
He's watching right now. He's like, I'm never letting this dude ink my stuff again.
Like he would share the pencil, or he would share my inks though on Twitter. It was really cool, and I'd get like really big responses. So it'd give me like a little bit of a confidence boost from like getting told no all the place. Where it's like, oh hey, they actually do like my artwork. It's just publishers don't. But
go ahead. Oh, you?
Okay, I go. So I would do all these inks. I'd send out my inking portfolio to 40 different publishers at the end of every month, and I did that from December till March. And again, nothing. I think I got one ink test that I did to where someone was like, hey, I actually do like your inks. Let's do a test. And I did an ink test, and then he was like, you know what, no. And then bailed, and I'm like, oh, okay. And then in April, I went to the local comic book convention that we have here. It's called Planet Comic Con. I go every year, and it's just fantastic. I went to a panel that had Jason Aaron and Scotty Young were talking about the makings and the difference between mainstream and indie comics. And I'm like, I gotta go to this. And I went to it, and they're talking about their struggles of not getting hired and their difficulties getting into the comic book industry, and on how it's harder now to get into comics than it was before, like with mainstream, and it's easier for you to do indie comics. And they use their mainstream money that they get from working at Marvel DC to fund their indie projects.
That's smart.
And they're like, if you really want to get into comic books, one, if you're already trying, then you're already in comics. But if you want to start, making your own stuff, then do indie comics. And then I'm like, I could do indie comics. I could totally do this. I mean, I was always like an artist first and writer second, but I'm like, I could so totally do this. So that's when I'm like coming up with the idea for Project Solomon, was in the middle of walking around Comic-Con.
So when you were applying, like, were you mostly like targeting like the bigger publishers out there, or were you targeting them all?
I had one big publisher, which was Image. The rest of them were all indie studios. So I don't know where the list is. I had it over here, but there is, if it's an indie publisher, like, what was one? I did Skybound, Mad Cave was one of them, like stuff like this.
So, I mean, how does it feel to go that long with that many rejections? You are so resilient and like standing in the face of it to keep swinging to get this made, and to finally kind of have that like switch flick and like just be like, oh, maybe I just need to do it on my own. Like, how was that moment of realization for you?
I definitely was a lot happier.
So no, before we were completely dismantled by a cat hair, where were we?
It was me talking about. Oh, that was it. Okay.
The moment of realization.
Yeah, the moment of realization for it. In November, I couldn't, like, I had to take a break from just drawing. I was just getting told no from not only just from like art stuff, but then I was having like getting told no in a bunch of like personal parts of my life. And it's just like, okay, stop, and having like a knee-jerk reaction to everything. So I couldn't draw. I wasn't doing anything comic book whatsoever for like a month. And then right after my 21st birthday, I'm like, I can't. I have to keep going. I have to keep doing artwork, because being an artist and writing and stuff like that is part of who I am, and I kind of have to do it. I can't.
You got to keep that blade sharp. You got to keep at it. That way you're honing your craft. I mean, how was you able to work through that? That had to have been taking a pretty heavy toll on you too at the same time, right?
Yeah, that was a lot of party bag size of Oreos dealing with it. But it was a process. It took a lot of, I started like doing meditations and yoga, and I have a Jewish background, so I started praying more, and that it kind of helped me work through it and get through it. And it's taken me a couple of months, but then seeing like Scotty Young and Jason Aaron and Dennis Hopeless was there too, of like them talking about like the same difficulties that I was dealing with, was making me feel, okay, I'm not alone dealing with this. And if these
guys, especially since those guys are bigger titans in the
I was like, okay, these guys are like massive in the comic book community. So I'm like, okay, if these guys are dealing with the same stuff that I'm dealing with, and they're able to push through it, and they're like big name comic book artists and writers and stuff now, I'm like, I could so totally do this. And it kind of motivated me to move forward.
So what is Project Solomon about? Can you give us a little bit of a breakdown? I know you said you came up with the idea walking on the floor of the con, but like, I guess I like in a synopsis, a setting, like, what are we looking at?
So this, with the first issue, Project Solomon, this is getting to know who the players are, understanding what Solomon is about, his personality. And what I'm trying to do with this story is kind of like taking the reader on a journey with Solomon, so as much as Solomon does.
Okay.
So when he's trying to figure out who he is, how he has these powers, Why is he getting chased by robots that look like him but are just more Terminator-esque? You're learning that with him. So he's going. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
So he's going to be. He's on Ulara 5 right now, which is like this junkyard planet where like all of the trash that's for the galaxy just gets dumped there, and he's trying to figure out, how did I get here? Because he wakes up on this dumpster planet and he's just like, wait, I'm alive, and why am I with the garbage? And then he will meet Gigabyte. You've seen Gigabyte in a little bit of the preview.
Cat?
The cat, yeah.
I love the name for it too. That's such a good name.
Gigabyte. So he'll meet Gigabyte, and he'll go on this journey of trying to get off of Ulara 5. So he's trying to build a ship to get off of Ulara 5, and he'll meet allies, and he'll figure out who the Omega regime is, which is this dictatorship that is trying to take over the galaxy, kind of like the Sith and all that stuff with Star Wars. Is kind of similar to that a little bit.
So this is also set some years after humanity too, right? Like humanity tried to colonize another planet, and then this led to Planetary Wars, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, so this is in an alternate reality to our universe, and so all of the history is the same until the 1950s, and then it just goes completely off the rails.
So, what makes it so different compared to us?
So in 1950, the difference is that space travel kind of like, oh yeah, we get to go to the moon or whatever for our history, whereas in Project Solomon's universe, it's okay, yeah, we go way past the moon to where they're going to other solar systems and they're colonizing these planets. And this is where, because, as soon as humanity gets the tiniest little bit of resource, it has to immediately fight for it. So they start the Planetary Wars, and they meet other alien civilizations, and this is what starts that. And then Omega will come in and is like, you know what, I'm doing this. This is mine now.
So what was some of your inspiration to start where you did with your story? You kind of start like, it feels like kind of a little in the middle, and with him not really knowing what's going on. I really like that introduction, but what was some of your influence for going that route?
Well, I wanted it to be kind of like, I wanted you to be confused a little bit, because it helps you connect with Solomon a little bit more, because he is also confused. So as he's figuring it out, you are figuring it out. And it also opens up the possibility of me doing like a prequel series. Okay. Because I already have that mentality of, oh, hey, I want to do sequels and also prequels. So I wanted to have like this middle story of like, this is already set up. This is where the world is, and then just go.
So what's the creative process look like for you when you're creating Project Solomon issue 1? From laying the inks and the coloring to scripting it out, like what's that ultimately look like?
So I started out with just doing like a rough draft of like the synopsis of what I wanted to do, and I had like the mentality in my brain of doing different branch off series. So I did the synopsis, and then I went through and I wrote the script out. And then after I finished writing out the script for everything, then I went in and did the pencils, and then I'll ink it. And I'll do like a page or two a day of just doing the pencils, the inks, colors, the lettering, all of it, and then going to the next page.
I gotcha. So is it how's it feel like going from, doing cover art and updating your portfolio to actually like creating the book? Like how's that process feel like for you?
It's very interesting. It's a learning experience, because I've never done like the whole thing. So now I know how to do the whole thing. But Project Solomon has been kind of like, it's been a learning experience for me to like perfect my artwork and like working on my craft, as well as like writing stuff too, because I've had to where I've written like little short stories or whatever, but I haven't done like a full in-depth universe like this before. Yeah. So that's also been a learning process. So I'm kind of, especially with this being my first Kickstarter, my first indie comic, it's gotten me prepared for what I want to do later, and I have like plans for other stuff later in the year and then for next year.
Okay, is it Project Solomon related or something different?
It's something different.
Oh,
That's what I was telling you about on Twitter like a couple days ago, that I wanted to set up a second interview for.
okay, yeah. I mean, we'll have to touch base on that a little bit later too. But let's get back to Project Solomon. So now that we've kind of had the idea that you're going to have some sequels and some prequels, it seems like there's going to be a rather long storyline with this. How many issues do you kind of have planned out?
For Project Solomon, I have planned about 6 issues, so it'll be, and then later it'll, you can collect it for like a volume if you want to, but I'm having 6 issues for that. Probably another 6 for the prequel, definitely, and then I have no idea for the sequel just yet.
Okay, no, that is so awesome though. It seems like you have a lot to flesh out, and I'm loving how this idea was just kind of created from the fact that you wanted to get into the industry, and then you forced your way into it. Like, I love that mentality so much. You're like, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to do it myself. And I think when you get this book completed, it's going to just be, it'll be an awesome portfolio in itself, right? Like, hey, I can do this. I've already made one. Like, that right there is like the biggest stepping stone, it feels like.
Yeah, that a lot of people, when I've been talking with other comic book artists, are like, if you want to get like into the industry, then make your own comic, because that'll prove to publishers, oh, he can actually do this. And if it's successful, then it's like, oh, the people will actually like his stuff.
Yeah. So I think we did a really good job building things up. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Kickstarter and kind of start breaking that down together. So we are looking at Project Solomon issue number 1. An AI named Solomon goes on an adventure of self-discovery while being hunted by the regime that plagues the galaxy. Currently at $336, up 2,500. 9 backers, and you're just literally like 2 hours into this, right? You just like started it, I think, what, like an hour or 2 ago?
I started at like 10, so yeah, about an hour and a half ago.
That is so awesome. So we are like right on the heels of this just launching. How are you feeling so far into it?
Feeling pretty good about it. I think it's got a good start, and yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah, I'm excited because I remember when we first started connecting, like you would send me some sneak peeks of this, and I remember seeing like the logo first being made and all that, and Omega, and I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be a heavy hitter. And I love the logo and the coloring too that you've done for Solomon. What was some of the inspiration for his design?
Actually, right after I went to Comic-Con, when I got back from it, I was so excited about like doing stuff with Project Solomon that I immediately started to watch like different Star Wars movies, and I watched Rogue One, and I seen BB-8, or not BB-8, that's a different one. K2SO, that's it. Wrong droid.
He needs to look a little bit more circular.
Yeah. I seen K2SO, and I'm like, you know what? I really like his design, so I'm going to use a little bit of K2SO for making Solomon. So that's a little bit of inspiration there. And like the overall style is because I grew up reading like the older like 1960s, 1970s comic books. Like I would get like the volumes of the Epic collections. Mm-hmm. And I would just read the crap out of those things like over and over and over and over and over again. And seeing like seeing Jack Kirby's artwork and stuff like that, that was like an inspiration. So I'm like, oh, if I'm going to be doing this, then I'm going to do something that's in that style. And even with like the actual printed version of Project Solomon will be in like that newsprint, like off-white paper. And
I love that.
And I'm like, I have to, if I'm going to do the like 60s Silver Age theme, then I'm going to have to do the 60s Silver Age theme.
Yeah. It also kind of reminds me, I don't know if you've ever played The Surge. It's kind of like a Soulsborne-esque type game. But
a little bit. Now I'm seeing it now.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit of that too. So that's pretty cool. So let's check out the overview. Project Solomon issue 1 follows an android named Solomon trying to get off world, is discovered to have unlimited power desired by the regime that plagues the galaxy. So This android has a little trick up his sleeve that we don't know right off the rip. I kind of like that. Learn the origins of this awkward android as he stumbles to discover who he is and not die in the process. If you enjoy stories like Star Wars or classic Marvel comics, then you will love this. So this is going to be 32 pages filled with action-packed story. That's a considerable amount for your first issue. Man, I'm loving that. I'm loving that.
Yeah, when I was trying to figure out how many pages it was, so I took all of the scenes that I wanted for the full story, and I laid them out on like this cardboard piece of paper with sticky notes. And I went over and I'm like, okay, how many pages do I need to actually show this scene? And I did that all the way through, and that's how I got like 32 pages. That's not including like the spacer pages and then the thank you pages, and there'll be extra stuff in the back for like thumbnails and things.
Yeah,
like
and
that.
there's a stretch goal I think for 4 more pages, right? Or
yeah, it's for the extra 4 pages. It'll show like concept art of Project of Solomon and Omega and some thumbnails and stuff like that.
So are we gonna see like his design change at all? Does he have like capability to like upgrade his parts at all, or is this kind of be like his design throughout the comic?
So we may touch on that on the second issue, of him like switching out his arm for like different attachments.
I like that.
And with his powers that he has, which is he gets them from how he was created for his life, which is the or having 2 stars collide and explode, because you know, comic book logic, that makes sense. He will have those powers, will be able to manipulate parts of his body to where he'll be able to kind of like shapeshift, almost like Cyborg from Teen Titans a little bit, to where he can like change the way that his arms and stuff look.
I like that. I like that a lot. So let's check out some of the page preview. We have J. Michael Miller over on YouTube stopping in to say, I like those covers. Yeah, right there. I think this is the original, and right here is the variant, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, so that is the original cover, but then when I made the variant, I fell in love with it so much that I switched it to where the variant is now the main cover A, and then the original is now cover B.
Yeah, these are. I'm really loving the color too. So do we see him fight the Sand Snake in issue 1, or?
Yes. So he will, in the middle of him being in the junkyard fields, where he's going to be looking for parts for his ship that he's trying to build to get off world. There is going to be a giant kaiju sand snake that will be roaming around the junkyard fields, and he will either run away from the snake or he's gonna fight it.
And then right here is a look at some of the preview pages. Of course, you could check this out on Global Comics as well. Do you have more pages on Global Comics, or is everything on Global Comics shown here?
There's more pages on Global Comics.
So be sure to check that out. You just got to look up Solomon Project issue 1. And you leave off on a good. I love the double page spread out of him kind of checking out the Wasteland. I thought that was gorgeous.
Yeah, that took me a little bit. I was trying to like figure out, okay, if I'm going to be having a junkyard planet and they're just dumping a whole bunch of stuff on here, I'm going to need to add like a bunch of different garbage. So that has like old cars are in there. I even have like a couple of like recycled buildings are in there, to where it's just like ruins from like some Planetary War battle.
And then right here, Gigabyte. I loved the cat-shaped bubble.
I knew when I was gonna make Gigabyte, whenever she would meow, I wanted her to have the little cat-shaped speech bubbles. So you'll see that regularly with her whenever she's.
Yeah, I remember when I first checked this out, I was like, dude, I am in love with it already. So right here we see him kind of walking into the sunset. What was some of your reasoning for it? Kind of felt like the room was like I don't know how to explain it, like a negative. Like there wasn't a lot of life into it. And the second he opened up the door, it's just he's walking into like a world of color. Was there any symbolism behind that?
Yeah, so I wanted him to feel like when he's just sitting in his like shack in the middle of the desert, that he feels confined in the space, and it's always like he's just stuck in his room.
Okay.
So I wanted him to feel like, oh, when he goes outside, it's kind of fun for him. Kind of like when you let a dog go outside, you know, it doesn't like being in the house. It wants to always go outside, go for a walk. So he's basically kind of like taking himself for a walk, so to speak. And in this, he will be breaking the fourth wall. So
okay, yeah, with the narration. It's funny how this was inspired by Star Wars, yet we see him like in sand. Vader would not be pleased.
No. The difference between Solomon and Omega, I wanted them to be complete opposites. So with Omega being like this egotistical, dramatic douche, I wanted Solomon to then be the complete opposite of that, to where he's like very lighthearted. He makes a lot of pop culture references, which is weird because he's living on a junkyard planet, so apparently he has cable. And just making make it kind of like having fun with everything.
Yeah. So here is a look at the story. This is a sci-fi adventure that takes place in an alternate reality to our own. In the late 60s, the United Nations have come together for the advancements of space travel. Using the technology advancements of the fallen Nazi Empire, the UN successfully builds the technology to not only travel to space, but also across the galaxy, colonizing planets and meeting new alien species. War breaks out among the stars for territorial gain. This will later be known as the Planetary Wars. So for anyone that's interested in the rest of that, be sure to check this out once again with us. I feel like we covered most of that, though, when we were kind of introducing things. So now here's a look at the rewards and the stretch goals as well. Before we get to that, though, let's go on the other side and just check out some of the tiers. So you can pledge $1 just to thank you for the support, and your name's going to be listed on the thank you page in issue 1 for that. Pledge $5 or more, and you'll get Project Solomon issue 1 for PDF for $5, and then listed on the thank you as well. $10 or more, you're going to get the Project Solomon issue 1 print A cover, and then for $10 or more, you'll get the B cover. So you cut the variant as the same price as the regular. I'm a big fan of that. I love when you get the same, you know, for the same price, you can get the option of either one or the other. So I think that's really cool. I wanted
to give a lot of people the option to choose which cover they like best, because it's always subjective on what cover you like, and I didn't want to make it more for someone who likes a different cover.
And then it also looks like you can get Project Solomon issue 1 print and digital for $10 as well. So I like that too, throwing together the print and the digital together for the same price. For $15, you'll get the digital comic, the physical copy, and then the name listed on issue 1 as well. And then this is for the variant. So pretty much you can get the print and the digital for $5 more. You'll get, and then same price for the digital as well. And then for $5 more on top of that, so for $20, you're gonna get the print signed. And then the collector pack. So you want to give us a little bit of a breakdown of the collector pack?
So the collector pack will give you both cover A and cover B. You'll get the digital, and you'll get your name listed on the thank you page. And then there is a pin that I'm getting made that's like, it's like an enamel pin. It's gonna be about 1 inch, 2 inches big, of Solomon kind of like waving high.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I'm only doing that on this Kickstarter. So it'll be kind of like a collector exclusive pin that if you could have of Solomon. And I only have 50 of them made.
Okay, yeah, so that's pretty cool. Backers are helping fund the printing of the physical issue number 1 of Project Solomon. It's currently 60% completed and will be ready for printers by the end of the campaign. Here's a look at some of these stretch goals. So at 3,000, every print backer will get a limited edition print. 3,250, every print backer will get a sticker. 3,500, every print backer will get a limited edition trading card. And then at 4,000, every print backer will get an additional 4 pages of sketches and thumbnails. So risk and challenges, you're almost complete with the comic. You basically just can't control like global pandemics and printing shortages. So anything else that we might have missed while digging into this Kickstarter?
No, I think we covered it.
Awesome. So with that being said, for anyone that is on the fence about backing this, what would you like to say to them directly to kind of help push them over that bump to get them to back this book and get issue 1 in their hands?
Well, if you guys are like really a big fan of like having that nostalgic feeling of like older, like Silver Age comic books, then this would be for you. If you are a very big fan of having sci-fi adventures that has like splices of comedy in it and pop culture references. And there is a scene to where Solomon does tell you to listen to a music while he's in a fight scene. I recommend you actually do play it when he's in that fight scene.
Can you give us a little leak of what the song is?
Do I want to tell you?
We can hold off. We can wait till we get the book. No biggie.
I would wait till you get the book and then pull up YouTube and then hit play once the scene starts. It makes it 10 times funnier.
That's so cool. I love when creators do that too. They include music within their property.
I was going to have him sing it, but copyright wouldn't allow me to have him sing it.
So we kind of touched base a little bit on what's next, but can you give us a little bit more on that second booking possibility? You kind of have a second idea. Can you give us a little bit of a taste of what to expect with that book?
It's completely different from Project Solomon. It's more of a dark, gritty noir.
Mm-hmm.
And it won't be a single issue, which I was laughing a little bit when you were saying that 32 pages was a lot for my first comic book, because this one is going to be a graphic novel, and it's going to be like at least 200 pages.
Eli's like, man, I've been waiting for this moment, so now that I got this moment, we're just
I'm gonna go hard with this, and I'm going to be making an announcement about the series in November, so you'll probably already know the date, because the day right afterwards, I want to actually talk to you, and we can talk about it on here.
Ooh, yeah.
So you'll get like a little inside of, he's going to be talking about it the day prior. But it's very different. It's very grounded, and it's, if I could see something that's similar to, probably it's a mixture, you'll like this, of Batman and Sin City put together.
Ooh, I like that a lot. Yeah, I like that a lot. Are we going to see a lot of those dark tones in it?
Yes, a lot. It's a lot of dark tones. It's a little bit of a psychological thriller. So it'll deal with really getting inside the head of the hero.
Okay.
And I don't really want to spoil too much other than that. I'll save for when we are talking about it later.
Yeah, not a problem at all. So I think this is right here is a perfect time for us to kind of segue with us focusing on your book and your history as a creator. I think it'd be really perfect to kind of get your insight on this question as well. For any time we do podcasts, I always love asking one question in particular, and that's pretty much for anyone that's out there that's just starting for their first time and maybe struggling getting their idea started. Maybe they're getting rejected and they want to just start a comic on their own just to get into the industry. What type of advice would you give them to kind of just get through that barrier?
So something that really helped me was, it's a mixture of two things. One, I got from when I was at like the booth with Jason Aaron, and he said that if you were trying to get into comic books, like you're trying to like get into the industry or whatever, the fact that you are trying alone, you're already a comic book artist. You're already a comic book writer. You're already doing it. Mm-hmm. It's just you haven't breaking through the wall just yet. It just takes a lot of pressure, and you have to keep pushing at it regardless of how difficult it is. And I've had the struggle. It is sometimes you debate if it's worth it or not, but it is really worth it. And the second thing that really helped me was whenever Stanley would ever be talking about making comics or anything like that, he was saying, if you have a really good idea and you know that it's good, that go for it and make it. Because even if it's like when I'm making Project Solomon and then like the other comic book that I'm going to be making, I'm making it because it's something that I like and it's stuff that I want to see made, and that's something that I would actually read. So if you are trying to make something, don't make something for other people, because by the time you get to doing the trend's already over. So just make stuff for you, and other people will enjoy it as well, because it'll show that you were enjoying yourself.
I love that. I love that a lot, especially making it for you, because then you're really able to put your passion into it. You're able to really put yourself into it and keep going during those lower moments when you're questioning if you should or not, as opposed to doing something that is like a trend where you might not feel as attached to it. So I think that really does add a lot more weight to it. And man, that was such an awesome response. Thank you so much, Eli. This has been such an awesome podcast. I apologize that my cat here like has dismantled me like in the beginning. Oh my God. I did not like, I just seen it floating. I was like, where's that going? And then right in my eyeball, I'm like, oh no.
It's a gigabyte hair. It's fine.
Yes, sir. And man, Gigabyte has some magical abilities because that totally destroyed me. With that being said, though, we were able to retrieve this podcast, save it at the very end, and come out hot and on fire on the top. Project Solomon is blazing out the saddles, and I cannot wait to see this get funded and in my hands. When are you looking at getting the, when you get funded and everything, when are you looking at having this shipped out? Like, when's the print date?
So it takes 8 weeks after the Kickstarter is done. So right around the beginning of November, I will be starting to ship out stuff.
Okay, so that's right around the corner. Let's go. And I love how you planned your next announcement like right when you're going to be printing
it's
this
right afterwards. So it's like as soon as you get the comic book, the week right afterwards, I already have some new stuff.
Eli's definitely not taking any breaks, and I love that mentality. After working so hard to get into it, you're like, I'm doing everything I can to stay here, and I love that. I think that's awesome, and I can't wait to see what else comes from you in the future. Eli, thank you so much once again for coming on here and breaking down Project Solomon and everything in between. Everyone that's been watching, it is the day after New Comic Book Day. Check out this Kickstarter right here. It's in the link, or in the comments, excuse me. Be sure to share that on Facebook or Twitter, because even if you can't back, you might have a friend or family member who would like this comic, and they might back. So word of mouth is free to do, and it will help out Eli get this message out as far as humanly possible. So be sure to share away. Most importantly, guys, keep it geekly.